it has become a unique example in Europe and elsewhere as well, which ever since has inspired the whole world until today. It's being used as a symbol of harmonious coexistence between cultures and the region, etc. So, my personal relation to Al-Andalus, for me, it's kind of a space for memory, basically. When we were growing as children, basically, at the time when children start understanding the discussion of the adults around them, the parents and others, we always heard the name of Al-Andalus coming back again, time again, in the discussion.
لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم.
So we knew that we had a relationship with Al-Andalus. So that was from an early age when we were somehow introduced to that notion of this great civilization. Of course, we didn't understand everything at the time, but it was a culture which was perpetuated generation after generation, and therefore we were impregnated with this memory from an early age. When I became later a filmmaker, an adult, and became a filmmaker, Al-Andalus became a kind of not only a visual attraction to me, but it became a pole of attraction in terms of history, in terms of culture, and this is the fundamental reason, basically, when until today, I started my first film made there in Al-Andalus, in the three cities of what we call the Golden Triangle between Cordoba, Sevilla, and Granada. Was made in 1992. It was called 1492, The Shattered Utopia, and the film which it was a point of view, an Islamic point of view on Christopher Columbus' discovery. In 1992, it was, of course, the celebration of 500 years of Western civilization and the discovery of America. The majority of the media organizations, including newspapers, they somehow completely forgot about almost 900 years of Islamic history in the Iberian Peninsula. And 1992, of course, was also the fall of the last kingdom of Granada. So there was these two elements in that celebration in 1992, and naturally I wanted to present a different point of view, an Islamic perspective on Columbus' discovery, and that was my first film. Actually, I made a short film, about 22 minutes, I think, like this, which attracted a lot of attention. It was shown early 1993 in two important film festivals in London, yes, and also shown in public several places. So that is my first encounter, I would say, physically with Al-Andalus. Arriving there, it was very familiar. I mean, you can see the people, the faces of the people, their traditions, the food, the way they live. Everything was very familiar to me, basically, because it was exactly almost a replica of my own society in Algeria, yes. And ever since then, I built up basically a career, mostly from that moment on exploring the culture and the history of Al-Andalus. So when I heard in 2005, when I heard that the mosque was about the news,
Por parte de la Iglesia hay una falsificación permanente de la historia. La Iglesia falsifica la historia desde su sesgo ideológico.
Con el actual obispo ya siendo obispo de Córdoba, en octubre de 2010, en una carta publicada en el diario ABC, invitaba a los cordobeses a dejar de llamarle al templo mezquita y llamarlo Catedral de Córdoba, con lo que se montó un gran revuelo.
Nuestra intención fundamentalmente es advertir al mundo del riesgo que corre este monumento. Tan grave es la destrucción simbólica de lo que significa la mezquita y de lo que significa Córdoba para el mundo.
I've basically virtually decided overnight. At that time I had finished some work in Germany. I decided overnight to go and do to film, because I wanted to be knowing the great importance of this monument for the whole Islamic world, but also for in terms of artistic excellence. It's a unique artistic architecture. So we went, decided to make it. Particularly I wanted to be part of this civil society movement for the defense of the mosque, and this is how we started basically, and we made this film called Cordoba. It's not about the mosque per se as an architectonic things. It's about the spirit of the mosque, the symbol it represents as a symbol of coexistence and peace, which resonates from the very beginning of the golden age of Al-Andalus, yes, which is called, summarized in 2 words, it is the spirit of Cordoba. The spirit of Cordoba is that society which has managed to create, as I said, an egalitarian society, unique in Europe in the 9th and 10th century. And so this film is about that symbolism, because if we wanted to make a film about the mosque, we would have explored the architectonic side of it. They explored its foundation, when its several expansion through the different caliphs and emirs, and so the film is not about that. The film, donc, in fact, the real title is Cordoba. Why it is Cordoba, finally? Because the people of Cordoba associate the mosque with Cordoba. They say the mosque is Cordoba and the Cordoba is a mosque. It's the identity of the city. So this is why it's called Cordoba. That inspiration, or that interest I have for that great history of Al-Andalus has remained, is still there all the time, you see. So it's a pool of inspiration, but it's a treasure chest, because the history is so great, it's immense, it's so inspiring, that you need probably 3 or 4 lives to make half of it into films. So we're trying to make the maximum, of course. So the theme is the same, the inspiration is the same. As the progression or the development in terms of language or style things, I think every filmmaker who is deeply involved in films and who bring into it certain reflection and interested in the language of the visual language and everything, develop a style which becomes almost natural because according to his maybe his place in history, culture, education, and all this combined will make him develop individual, of course, characteristics, make him develop a particular style. So the style, I may say, I could say it because this I lived it myself and I was questioning myself. Say, what is it that I do something, most of the time the same thing again and again? Whatever the subject, yeah, I approach it in the same way. So that is the style. You realize it's a style. When you do things like in literature, the great writers write the same thing again and again. It's the style. It's right. And then they talk about the same thing again and again in their whole corpus of work. It could be 20 books, but you realize that all talk about the same thing. That is the famous, they call it the famous consciousness. Yes. So the famous style. I'm not comparing myself to the great writers, but I have questioned myself, and I wanted to find out why I do the same thing again and again. And that style, in fact, as I describe it, as I feel it, is, I could say, it's a poetic approach to any subject. It's a poetic style, because for me, cinema is not about, it's less about paintings, it's certainly not theater. It's more about, mostly about poetry or music, and ultimately about music, because it's about rhythm, it's about images. Poetry is images. The best of poetry, when you read the verse of poetry, you have an image. The poet gives you an image. You open up your horizon to imagine something through that image. It's extraordinary. It's a language of image, the poetry. Music is a language of rhythm and also evocation. When you hear certain music, it evokes something to you, experience that you have lived in the past, or it evokes an encounter, whatever it is. But music as an art form is probably the most developed art form that human beings have developed. And any other art form, at its best, in my view, should be musical. You know, Cordoba is also known as the illuminated city. Why it is called the illuminated city? Because it is the number of scientists and philosophers and great intellects that Islamic Spain has produced throughout the ages, yes, particularly in Cordoba as a seat of power, of Khalif of power, yes. And names like Ibn Rushd, Averroes, Al-Zahrawi, who was a surgeon, and he invented all the instruments that are still used today all over the hospitals in the world. The instruments, yeah, that was from 10th century Cordoba, Medina al-Zahra, and one of the greatest minds of all time intellect was Ibn al-Hazm al-Andalusi, who wrote something like 800 books, something like this. Yes, he was a great mind, recognized as such by both Muslims and non-Muslims as one of the greatest intellects of all times, even to modern times. So Cordoba shines. It shines with the sciences that this great man has created. So it has the spirit. The spirit of Cordoba is that, not only on the social level, but it's also on the artistic, scientific, human civilizational level. Yes. And as Cordoba, the illuminated city by its science, Konya is illuminated by the presence of the great Sufi master, who is Celaleddin Rumi, Maulana Celaleddin Rumi. And he is a beacon of, Konya is a beacon of, is one of the greatest spiritual centers in the world, yes, because of the presence of the spirits of the great master, you see. And they both shine in their own way. And that's why I think there is a connection between the two. So for us, as pioneers of this Islamic subject, we started some more than 30 years ago. Yeah? People weren't really interested. However, we believed in it, in the case of Andalusian Encounters, let's say. I managed to raise some money from friends, really. And Farouk and I are never paid on these films. We do 2 or 3 jobs at the same time, yeah? Which was good because we learned about everything. But we are not paid. We have very little money to travel, to have a room in a hotel, and to hire equipment, more or less, whatever it is.
How do you find the money?
Well, I said there wasn't sources of finance for this kind of films, but we believe in them. So when they were made, that was a revelation for many people. Not only for Muslim audiences that they show it, but for non-Muslims, when they saw Andalusian Encounters, they were extremely interested because it was a vista, a door which was open to them for the history of Europe, which has been denied to them for over 500 years. The audience, the European audience, been put in the dark because the history of Al-Andalus is fundamentally the history of Europe. Huh? But Europe has denied this history to their own citizens for 500 years or more. Therefore, it was like a collective amnesia. We put this history in the cupboard. We don't want to hear about it. So when they start seeing these films, it was a revelation for them. And particularly Europeans were involved in this film, like the girl, she's European, etc. She became Muslim.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله.
Why she became Muslim? The film is about how and why, yeah? In the setting of a new era in Al-Andalus, the resurgence of Islam in Al-Andalus. So the way we financed our film wasn't really proper financing, but it was an act of faith. It is very important. We believed in it, and we gradually carry on doing this with some improvements. And as far as I'm concerned, I mean, Cordoba, I financed it through my own company with my own money, because I had the chance to work previously a few years in a big project, and I had this money, and then I say, what am I going to do with this? I'm going to find the best way to invest it in something important, you see. Our own documentaries we made, Andalusian Encounters and Cordoba, we have added some scenes. Some of them are recreated. They're not invented, different. They're just recreation of what the girl has lived herself. So recreate something with her, and she do it herself. She reconnect with her own past. In Cordoba, for instance, we added some scenes and with a dialogue between philosophers of the past, Averroes and Maimonides, Ibn Maimun, the dialogue between them about science and philosophy and all these things.
Hay algunos que piensan que la ciencia y la religión no son compatibles. El resultado de esto será una confusión infinita y la miseria para el género humano.
El problema es que ciencia y religión son dos palabras diferentes para una misma cosa.
O más bien, son dos caminos diferentes que llevan al mismo principio unitario.
Ilustre maestro, ¿puedo preguntaros cómo llegasteis a conocer el Tratado de Lógica y Dialéctica, llamado el Organón de Aristóteles, hasta el punto de recitar de memoria pasajes enteros?
Hermano, ¿cómo podría dejar de conocer y absorber por completo las enseñanzas del más grande de los maestros? No hay duda de que Aristóteles es el primero y más consumado de los filósofos. Gracias a él, la filosofía abarca todas las ramas del conocimiento y forma un conjunto lleno de significados. Y sin embargo, hermano, tenemos una misión fundamental. Para mí, consiste en resolver el conflicto que parece existir entre la filosofía de Aristóteles y el dogma religioso, tal y como se expresa en el Corán.
Maestro, esa es una empresa difícil y peligrosa.
Como bien conozco vuestra forma de pensar, también tendréis que afrontar este conflicto aparente. En vuestro caso, es entre la racionalidad de Aristóteles y el dogma religioso de la Torá.
Una tarea que deseo tanto como temo, maestro.
Continuaremos este debate y juntos venceremos nuestros temores.
Farouk, we have always worked together for 30 years now, maybe more, yes, in many projects. Some projects we didn't work together, but in a lot of projects we worked together. So the experience with Farouk Bey was very enriching, and he brought his own contribution and I brought my own contribution. So we somehow find a beautiful working relationship all over these years, yeah? And we have gained a lot of a beautiful knowledge in a way, yes, of how we can work together. That was a very big project. Took us a long time to make it. A huge experience. We learned a lot about it because, you know, when you make something, the good thing about film is that when you approach a subject you are not particularly familiar with, you learn from people you work with and from the interviewees. They are specialists, they are experts. You ask them, you do some research in order to start questioning them first of all. You have to prepare questions. In order to question somebody, you need to do some research, what they do, who they are. And second, what they say is a great source of information and knowledge as well. So you end up knowing more than a lot of things which are not of your area of interest. But it's a wonderful experience. It's very enriching to this human contact and sharing. It's extremely enriching profession, I must say. You learn a lot. This is one thing. So the filming was a lot of time very difficult, particularly in Mecca and the tower site. Extremely difficult. Farouk can say a lot about it. Hot, first of all, the heat in Mecca, but the tower was like a monster. Yes? So we have to deal with all this security side of it, safety, and long hours of filming. And we were, you know, many times to film some scenes which are unique. Yeah, we have to be. We were put in a moving basket, basically, with at 600 meters high, higher than 600, because the tower is 603 meters, I think, or 1 meter, whatever. So we were above the tower by a few meters in order to film it with a high-angle shot. We had the whole thing like this.
In the basket you were filming?
Huh?
In the basket you were
In
filming?
the basket, yes. And then it's very windy up there, because the higher you go, sometimes we go and then we ask to be drawn immediately down, because it becomes like this, very dangerous. I mean, we had some, we took some risk, a serious risk. I think the only message can be given by, let's say, an adult to young people or the audience of that, is to follow their dreams. Because dream is the power behind any reality when we're talking about reality. Any achievements, any real production is the dream behind it. Because there's the great architect, Egyptian architect Hassan Fathi, that we participated in. He's one of the greatest architects of the 20th century. He used to tell us, you have to build your house, to dream your house before you build it, to project it in the future as a construction before you build it. Otherwise, what you're going to build, you're going to change everything, and the space will not be harmonious. You have to dream it, like an engineer or a poet. Yes, you have to dream it. So I think young people have to believe in their dreams, which is the real engine behind any real kind of realization, I believe, really. Dream is not utopia, because difference between utopia is totally unrealistic, yeah? But dream is part of, we live dream every night, we dream. Everybody dreams to becoming somebody when we are children. You dream becoming a doctor or a policeman or a president, whatever. Dream is part of our soul, of our being. So, but usually dictators deny to the population to dream. So the poet says something about dreams, say, when he was criticizing the dictators, say, they forbidden the dream to be dreamt. They forbidden the dream to be dreamt. Because when you forbid somebody to dream, it means you cut off a huge part of his ability to develop, to project himself in the future. So dream is essential to anybody, for any profession, for any young life who wants to, and anybody can do the most extraordinary dream, can realize it if they believe in it. You have to, this is all our films are about the dream. We dreamt this film, and then of course it's hard, but the strength behind which makes you carry on is the dream, yes, because you can see it happening. If you don't project it in front of you as something which is going to happen, how can you survive? Because there are so many problems about you every day, and life brings a lot of problems. But that power which gives you direction is the dream, in my view, which is more of a reality than the reality we perceive, in fact.